You know, Bill, when you think about it, between the two of us, we've spent more than 3/4 of a century in higher education, and as professors and administrators, as faculty leaders, we've done it at other institutions. It's a privileged life that we've been able to lead, and you've treated it especially more like a calling. These are incredibly complicated institutions. And I wonder sometimes if most people know what it is we do in them. Sometimes I wonder if they're even understandable at all.
Yeah, I wonder about that too, Michael. Sometimes to me it seems that administrators and trustees treat universities like cats that you try to make bark. And then when the cat don't bark, you try to reduce it all to a spreadsheet to try to figure out why so you can control it, and you do so without keeping its core purpose in mind.
You and I are never going to exactly see eye to eye about administrators and trustees, but ever. But at least we can agree about what the core purpose of universities is, and it's knowledge formation. And that is to say, universities create and verify, disseminate, preserve, and search for new uses for knowledge. That's what we do. And we always call it research, teaching, and service to the public.
Yes, and we agree that the key to knowledge formation is freeing the imagination for the development of the widest possible pool of ideas, because ideas are the raw material for testing. Anything that suppresses the imagination or limits the creation or open discussion of ideas, in essence, declares war on the formation and use of knowledge.
That's right, but knowledge formation, as you know, does not exactly occur in a vacuum. There's the inevitable advice from trustees and politicians when new presidents especially are appointed, and that advice always goes the same way, and it's in two parts. Part one, don't screw this up. Part two, you have to run it like a business. Well, I always tried to run universities like a business, but I'll tell you, it sure as hell helps to know what business you're in. I never had a trustee or a politician say to me, "Now, Michael, you be sure to take very good care of the knowledge formation process." Never happened, Bill.
That is precisely our problem. Far too many people are trying to govern and control higher education without really knowing or valuing the nature of our business.
But most trustees come to public institutions with really very good intentions, and they're successful professional men and women who know their own businesses well, but they don't necessarily know very much at all about ours. They find universities culturally very, very different from their own, and rather than trying to figure out the culture of higher education, most of them would rather impose the cultures of their own enterprises on the university because it's easier and it's faster. Their cultures are generally not organized around that core purpose of knowledge formation. So that means that faculty members like you who do the idea generating and the idea testing cannot and really should not ever be treated as the help. You're the primary asset of any institution, so you share in the governance of those institutions, and that's puzzling to a lot of people.
Yeah, trustees and politicians try to impose their own regimens on university, and then when the cat doesn't bark the way they expect it to, they start to measure it and control it and evaluate it and strategize and prioritize.
You can always count on that, as a matter of fact. It seems funny now, but some years ago, it took me a long time to get a trustee at another university to finally understand when I said to him, "We don't make money here, we spend it." And I told him that my job was to get my hands on every dime that I could get my hands on, and then to spend it wisely on behalf of the students and their professors. But that guy couldn't fathom the idea of not having a bottom line dollar metric every year.
Yeah, so on one hand, the success of a university at achieving its core purpose depends upon fundamentally human things, quintessentially human things, such as imagination and the open discussion of ideas, which don't readily lend themselves to being measured or controlled. And on the other hand, trustees and politicians tend to come from command and control type environments, so their attention goes invariably to things that can be measured. And that diverts administrators' attention from the core purpose and real business of the university.
There's some truth to that. Administrators are often put in the unhappy situation in which they're trying to mediate between the values of these two very different cultures. And the business of the university is even more complicated and made that way by the fact that how anybody sees it is dependent on where they stand in relation to those competing values. So students and their parents mostly see these places in terms of teaching. Never mind research or any of the rest of that fancy stuff. It's teaching. Politicians now see it in terms of what they call student success. It's based on the idea that if a state can stack up degreed humans like logs, then business and industry will be drawn to that state's advanced workforce. Professors, of course, all see it in terms of research, development of new knowledge, and the business community sees it in terms of having access to work-ready graduates.
Yeah, but here's the point, Mike. Regardless of your point of view, universities are the only institutions in society that have been created for the singular purpose of knowledge formation, and you administrators have to be the champions of that purpose first and foremost.
Bill, you are fixated on the idea of ideas. And that's your business, so I understand it. But there's more to it than that. Many of the realities of university administration are about power and money, not ideas.
Michael, ideas are every bit as important as either power or money, if not more so. You've always said that the real business of the university goes on in the classrooms and the laboratories and the libraries and faculty offices and studios, and not in the office of administrators. The jobs of administrators are to make sure that the real business of the university goes better than it would if they were not in office. To me, that means your first and main job is to defend the proliferation of ideas from people and institutions that would like to suppress them, regardless of how much money they have or how powerful they are.
Let me give you an example of competing values that get in the way and just drive administrators nuts. The dean of the College of Education at the first university where I served as president came to see me. She said there was a strong movement among the deans of education at large research institutions to advocate for a major shift in teacher education. The deans were advocating for undergraduate students to major in subject matter fields, typically in the liberal arts and sciences. And her point was that teachers should have knowledge in their disciplines before they learn how to teach it. Novel. Teacher education, she said, should be a graduate program only. Right away, I saw that proposal as diminishing our undergraduate enrollment, since many students who want to be teachers would simply seek out undergraduate programs that could be completed in 4 years elsewhere. My first thought was to protect the operating budget. But my second thought was about dormitory occupancy. Because if we lose undergraduates, we inherit vacant dorm rooms, and we were carrying substantial bonded indebtedness on those dormitories. So, on the one hand, the dean was probably right. Teacher education should be a graduate program. On the other hand, I had to run it like a business. And it's all about balancing ideas and the need to run the business, and that's called good administration. And it's also called academic leadership. And it's hard, Bill. That dean, by the way, ultimately forgave me for that. Many years later, she even married me. But she still sticks that one to me every once in a while.
Nice lady, too. You're really lucky. Anyway, I'm sure that there's countless examples of two competing values, and I'm sure they can be tough calls. But I think the way the calls are being made really gives way too much weight to power and money, when the really valuable longer-term purpose of knowledge formation has to do instead with ideas. Way too many administrators focus mainly on making themselves and their campuses look good in terms of business metrics, and by building dorms like luxury hotels and other buildings that are reminiscent of the corporate offices of Fortune 500 companies. At the same time, they neglect the way more important job of actively protecting their campuses from forces that want to dictate what are and what are not thinkable thoughts. Ideal limiters are like thought police that suppress and shrink the pool of thinkable thoughts, which is to say ideas.
Yeah, let's see if this is an example of what you mean. When I began as president at Kent State University in 1982, I was determined that that university was going to come to terms with the meaning of the terrible events of May 4th, 1970. Remember, 4 students were killed and 9 others badly wounded by National Guard troops. So to make a very long story shorter, after a long and difficult effort, we decided to build a memorial to the events of that terribly, terribly tragic day. Bill, a member of Ohio's General Assembly who was a Vietnam War veteran, didn't like the idea that anyone would have protested the war in the first place. And he saw the memorial proposal as a reward to the protesters. And he managed to insert into the budget bill language that prohibited any funds appropriated in that bill from being used for the construction of that memorial. He was determined to suppress the idea of what had been expressed by the student protesters and the idea of the reprisal that ensued. Well, on the memorial that was finally constructed, the inscription reads, "Inquire, learn, reflect." Might as well have said, idea. Well, that legislator didn't care much about the campus landscape, I'm sure of that. He cared only about the idea being expressed, and he moved to suppress it.
Yeah, exactly. And I'm concerned that in one form or another, that sort of thing goes on way more often than people realize. Some forms of idea suppression are subtle, while others are more obvious. But any idea that becomes an unthinkable thought is a deletion from the pool of ideas available for knowledge formation.
You know, another form of idea suppression these days is the view that universities are only supposed to be seen in raw vocational terms.
Amen.
And too many people see and understand our efforts only in terms of jobs and career preparation for our students. They see universities more as trade schools instead of institutions of higher learning. And by the way, that includes, unhappily, the President of the United States who denigrated art history majors because he didn't see a clear career path for them. Or it includes the governor of the state of Florida who took the same shot at anthropology majors in spite of the fact his daughter was one.
Yeah, and I think you were the one who told me about a member of the Ohio legislature who said he didn't think that citizens should have to pay for the education of even one more history major.
Yeah, he said it in my living room. But all of that is just the tip of the iceberg. And to some extent, it's our own fault. Not only administrators, but faculty members too have been just terrible at getting people to understand that this effort of ours is about more than jobs and careers. I mean, those are important things, and only a fool would say they're not.
Yeah, but also critically important is that we teach our students how to learn throughout their lives and to inquire from multiple points of view, to be critical thinkers, to separate evidence from opinion. It's equally important that we teach them that there is life after work, and that the good life includes a place for the arts and the humanities and sport. And last but certainly not least, we have an obligation to teach them that there's skills needed, and that we should teach them the skills they need to defend their own liberty and ultimately our democracy.
There are idea suppressors of all kinds all over the place. They want you to consider yourself unburdened of the need to think. Idea limiters do the knowing for you, and they're easily found among the ideologues of both the far left and the far right in the political spectrum. And between the authoritarians of the left and the authoritarians of the right, there's not much to choose.
Yeah, beware of people who really believe they have a corner on the truth market. They're like knowledge formation angels of death, like ISIS. And by the way, political correctness is another idea suppressor, another red light to the imagination. It's very much akin to book burning.
Yeah, it really is, and as a matter of fact, it's getting out of hand. These obstacles are making it much more difficult to balance the defense of ideas with the business of ideas. University's a business, Bill, but it's a very special and very unique kind of business. And unless it's organized and run in a way that is consistent with the kind of business we are in, then you're right. The politicians and the trustees and administrators and even some professors are going to continue to try to make the cats bark.
Michael, yeah, the university is a business in a way, but it's also far more than a business. It's a place where ideas are formed, and the knowledge for building and maintaining a society is kept informed, where students and faculty members can explore and discuss ideas, and where hope for a better future can be found. The surest way I know of to ensure that generations of our children yet to come will live in the sort of world that we would have for them is to protect and promote and continually improve the academic discourse and the diversity of ideas in our universities. That means protecting and promoting their core purpose, because it's in fulfilling that core purpose that the future is formed, and that is the real business of the university.
And on that we both agree.